All right. Hi, everybody. Hope we're doing all right. Okay, good. Put my eyebrows on. I'm ready to go. I don't, I don't know if everybody, I'm sure you heard me talk a lot. You've seen me on the ukulele. People that don't know me, maybe on Zoom. My name is Rachel. I wouldn't say I'm new anymore. I've been a member for about a year or so. My family comes with me, just not today. I was the only one that could make it here only 5 minutes late instead of 20. So um, I love all of the songs that Luke picked out. I know that we texted a little bit before, so you know kind of what I was going to speak on, but they just fit in so perfectly with what I wanted to share today. And if I talk too fast, please let me know. When I get excited and when I go on a tangent and try not to read from the script, I start to ramble a little bit. It's the adult ADHD in me, so picked a great day to come and see a neurospicy sermon. Okay, so Kate's sermon last week, if you were here or were listening, is actually a great segue into what I wanted to talk about today, especially when they used our beloved St. Fred Rogers quote about, am I allowed to say that? He should totally be sated, about looking for the helpers. And the full quote is, when I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. And Kate was real and addressed how dark and terrible times feel and are. Lately, especially for anyone who isn't in the inner circle of the upper echelons of society. And this is a time to look for the helpers because finding helpers helps us find hope. I am expanding this to say we should also be the helpers. We all know the two greatest commandments, to love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind and all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. There's no commandment greater than these. And the way to love our neighbors is to show up for them when we can. We have plenty of examples from Jesus of how to show up for people, and some are truly miraculous, but what he does before he performs some of these miracles shows us what we can do as human beings to actually help. When Jesus and his disciples were on their way out of Jericho, the blind man Bartimaeus called out to him to be healed. With this particular story, because he's healed more than one blind man, this man seemed to have not always been blind, because it says in the Bible, he was able to see before. So maybe at some point he was in an accident, or he fell ill, or someone had attacked him, or maybe he made a terrible choice to see how long he could stare into the sun. Regardless of the reason, he was desperate and wanted help. And he cried out, "Have mercy on me." And other people in the crowd who were also purportedly following Jesus chastised Bartimaeus and ordered him to be quiet. And how often have we seen people silence those crying out for help? And how often have we been silenced? And how often have we silenced people crying out for help? The magical part of the miracle was, of course, that Jesus healed him of his blindness and sent him on his way in his faith. And that isn't the example from the story we should follow, because it isn't something that you or I could probably ever do, unless any of you are ophthalmologists and your job is literally to help the blind. So the true example to follow is to not ignore those who are hurting. We need to make space for others to share their experience. And we can't help find solutions if we don't first quiet down and truly hear and listen to the problems. We can't let it make us so uncomfortable that we just want to make it go away. If we're able, we should do what we can to amplify the voices of the least of us. We should hold hands with them, grieve with them, speak up for them when they're silenced. And by not being bound to our own spiritual blindness, we can move forward in faith that we are capable of helping others. And the same story with the woman who was about to be stoned to death. It is more popularly known as the woman caught in adultery, and I resent that because it reduces her identity to just one choice that she's made, and it's the only one that made it into the Bible just because Jesus was there. I've always speculated in more ways than one on how she actually got into this situation. What if the story was made up by her husband, Soraya M. style, because he just didn't like her anymore and it was an easy way to get rid of her? What if she was actually fighting someone off and this was a classic case of victim blaming? What if she was literally just making out with her fiance? I'm sure at least one of these speculations isn't correct, but the miracle in this story isn't that Jesus forgave her for her salacious ways, although that's what the youth group leaders wanted us to all think when we were teenagers. The miracle was everything Jesus did leading up to that point. He made sure everyone accusing her that he saw right through them, he got them to leave. He waited until everyone was gone to talk to her because he was making sure she was safe from physical harm first. I do not think he immediately told her to go and sin no more. I think he sat with her. I think she was terrified, and he was the only person at that moment not causing her harm. I think she cried. I think he held her and let her cry on him. And I think he cried with her because her pain made him sad. He talked her through it. She wasn't going to be condemned physically by the mob, and she also wasn't going to be condemned spiritually by Jesus. I think he made sure she was absolutely going to be okay before she decided she was able to get up, and then he sent her on her way. We can be the helpers in so many different ways. My kids are amazing helpers and make breakfast for each other when I have to leave way too early in the morning for work and Colin is still asleep. They have also made each other hot chocolate when the other one is feeling sad or unwell. It's kind of our thing in our house where if you're sad, you get a hot chocolate and you talk about your feelings. Because it's really hard to stay sad if you have a really good hot chocolate. Colin does the dishes when I'm stuck in an ADHD paralysis from being overworked, even if it's my turn. And that happens a lot more than I'd like to admit. We can make dinners or do drugstore runs for people who are sick. If we have the skills, we can help change someone's flat tire, give rides to friends whose cars are broken down, donate full duffel bags to the Foster Love Project, attend peaceful marches and protests to support those in the middle of wars and others who are in danger of losing their rights to merely exist. Keep a tampon in your bag in case someone in the stall next to you needs it. Literally just hold the door open for someone whose hands are full of a crying toddler. I had someone in a public bathroom give me a diaper when Michael was a newborn, and I realized I forgot to pack mine, and he was on the changing table, and I was in the middle of trying to change him. It was my first baby, and I first time having mom brain, and so this person was a literal angel, and she was a helper more than she'll ever know. I will also add that we need to recognize when we need to help ourselves by slowing down and not burning ourselves out. Healthy boundaries make for healthy relationships, but that's a different sermon for a different time. The story I am about to tell is not to toot my own horn whatsoever, and I do not recommend this approach to normal people. But I do have a really weirdly extreme helper experience from about 7 years ago. I was leaving the Monroeville Mall, which we all know is like a feat in itself, depending on the Saturday. And a couple of cars down, I saw an older man talking to who I thought was maybe his wife, and was still sitting in the car, and he started yelling at her while she was still sitting. And the car, and at first the way he was doing it, it was like so ridiculous. It kind of sounded like the way that Colin and I have inside jokes, and we do a lot of like, why is the carpet wet? I don't know, Margot. And we just like yell at each other like as a joke, and we think it's funny, and it's, obviously never serious. And so I didn't really think anything of it at first, but then this guy started screaming threats of physical harm to this person in the car and slammed the door and huffed into the mall. And so I looked over and saw that the woman was sobbing, and I didn't realize how nebby I was being until writing this. So still no regrets, given the outcome, but still. I went over and knocked on her door to see if she was okay, and she turned out to be this man's 19-year-old daughter, his only child. And the long story short is that her mom died of cancer when she was 16, and ever since then, her dad basically took his grief out on her and was very severely verbally abusive and had become progressively abusive over and over the years. So Not really knowing what to do in that moment, I like hugged her and she sobbed and just seemed like really hopeless. And I listened to her and asked her about other options, if she had friends she could stay with, other family that she could stay with, to at least like have a little break. And as I was listening, her dad came back and he saw me talking to her and tried to sweet talk me and say that she was just being dramatic. She'll be fine. It wasn't that bad. And apparently I'm crazy because I just got up and went off on him and said verbatim what I heard him say outside of the car. And I said this was his only child, and if he still thought it wasn't that bad, maybe he could repeat it again over the phone to the authorities. And I was just like, I was probably a Karen in that moment, but also like a mama bear Karen at the same time. Is that a thing? I don't know. I just felt like nobody should talk to this person this way. Like, it doesn't matter that she's an adult, she's 19, that's his child. You know, literally the only thing he has left of his wife, and he's treating her like this. And I was not about it. Anyway, long story short, I asked her if she wanted to come stay with me for a few days. She said no. Obviously, I'm a stranger. That's weird. The whole thing was weird already. I gave her my name and my number, and then I got up into her dad's face and told him I had his car make and model and his license plate number. If he so much as breathes at her in the wrong direction, she has to text me and I will absolutely come do something about it. And then when they left, I realized I didn't get her number, so I cried all the way home and prayed that I didn't just make it worse for her. And I did find her on Facebook 3 weeks later and ask if she was okay, and fully expecting her to be like, "Get away from me, you strange woman." But she actually wrote me back and said it was a miracle that I stopped by her car and said something, because her dad literally didn't bother her for 3 weeks, like not even to tell her she was stupid or waste of breath or all the things. He only spoke to her again to talk about paying for her to go to college. And before that, like through our conversation and everything, he was like, "I'm never paying for you, like you're dumb, you're not gonna blah, blah, blah." You know, it was like, so that in and of itself, even though he didn't say he was sorry, is some sort of miracle, because it's a way for her to move forward if she were able to go. I don't know. Anyway, I probably shouldn't have told that story. I don't know. I'm clearly more of a table flipper than a peaceful protester. I think sometimes when I do tell this story, which isn't often, about helping this young woman, it's because it was a super uncomfortable situation to be in. And it wasn't like an easy, here, let me hold the door open for you, here, let me donate to, you know, to someone's, someone who's going through a hard bout of hunger. And it would have been so much easier to either do nothing or just offer a little, like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I hope it gets better soon, thoughts and prayers," and leave. But honestly, when have thoughts and prayers and pretending it's not our problem actually done good for anyone? After Jesus washed his disciples' feet, he told them to wash each other's feet. And by doing this, he was telling them that he was setting an example to be in service of and help others when they could. I know some of the disciples were like, "No, don't touch my feet, you are above me." And he was showing them, like, no one is above anybody. We all wash each other's feet. And he was showing how to be in service of and help others when they could. And he taught his disciples to love others because he loved them. I think creating more love in the world is the only reason to try to change anything. This was said by Carol Lynn Pearson, a current day helper that I greatly admire. She is an LDS feminist, that might be an oxymoron, and a huge advocate for the queer community. Carol Lynn married her husband Gerald in 1966 in Salt Lake City, Utah, and the two were devout Latter-day Saints who both descended from several generations of church members. They were married for 12 years and had 4 children together and settled in Provo. Gerald had told Pearson while they were engaged that he had been in romantic relationships with men, but had left that phase of his life behind, because, you know, it's 1966, so it's a phase. Church authorities had also assured the couple that marriage would turn Gerald straight. Such fun. However, he eventually confronted his homosexuality, and after a move to California, prompted by his desire to explore this side of himself, They separated and were divorced in 1978. She could have easily had an excuse to hate him and say he ruined her life, but they loved each other so much, and they remained friends and still had a deep love for each other. And she constantly said what a great man he was and what a great father he was, and his children agreed. He returned to live with her and their children after being diagnosed with AIDS in 1984, and she was the one who cared for him until his death. And her book, Goodbye, I Love You, is about their years together. Carolyn didn't just help her husband feel happy and loved as they navigated their lives. She helped him feel comforted as he died so that he could be surrounded by her and their children. She then and ever since helped thousands of LDS people understand and love their queer friends and family without the caveat of love the sin or hate the sin. She truly loves as Jesus loves, and she is credited by many for saving their lives, parents their relationships with their children, and she is one of the inspirations for why I do what I do. The last line in her children's song, I'll Walk With You, says, Jesus walked away from none. He gave his love to everyone. So I will. I'll walk with you. I'll talk with you. That's how I'll show my love for you. The people in this building and the old one, and some who are not attending anymore, have been great helpers to me. Hot Metal is the epitome of Christ-like love. During my time through my faith crisis, my dear friend Amy invited me to a meeting, and since then, I have felt so loved, supported, and seen in this community. I have sobbed, hopefully quietly, through Nathan singing the Plowshare Prayer more than once, as I grieve my disappointment and betrayal in my previous church family, and the way I was treated there, as well as policies that were put out. And I was just met with hugs and encouragement. Nobody tried to fix me. Nobody tried to thoughts and prayers me. It was just, I'm really sorry. Can I give you a hug? Stuff sucks. This space helped me by letting me offer my services so I could not only help, but take up space and thrive. And I've watched people of so many different backgrounds, identities, faith communities come together to help Hot Metal continue to do what it does best. And as we continue to be the helpers, we will continue to thrive and help in faith so that we can continue to love as Jesus loved. Amen.